Okay, let's do this before the wind kicks up again. Well, welcome back. My name is Paul and this is Joe and we're building a sunroom. Today we're going to show you how we frame the sunroom floor. That's going to be three different main components. It's going to be the ledger, which is the board that attaches to the house, the beam that supports the outside of the addition, and then the floor joists, which run all parallel and support the floor. So in the last episode, we showed you how we got our mark on the rim joist of where square is to our footing that we have out there. Now we want to overhang that off this because this is square to the center of the footing. We've got this door here, and I want to clear this door and have enough room for the interior trim to come down here. So we're just going to add another 9 inches from the center of our post out there for an overhang, which means I've got to add it over there too because I want it to be even on both sides. So instead of this, the centers are 14 feet apart. So I'm going to add 9 inches on each side. So Joe over there is going to mark it at 15 feet, 15 and a half feet. We're going to use the laser to mark a level line so we know where to put our ledger to attach the addition. Where we really care about position is right here because this is where the entryway is going to be. And so we want our flooring, our finished flooring, to line up with this threshold here. Our flooring is going to be 1/4 inch. I want it to go underneath this threshold. And then we're going to have plywood on top of the framing. That's 3/4 inch. It's called Subfloor. And then we've got the top of the framing that sits on. So all in all, I need to make sure that I've got my framing set 1 inch below the bottom of this threshold. And then we just level it to that side because I don't really care where that falls in relation to the house because there's no entryway over there. Now we're gonna snap a chalk line. You stretch it tight, you snap it against the building, and then you end up with a line of chalk on the building. And that's nice because it's permanent. If we knock over the laser, then our laser line is gone. But once we snap this on, it becomes, well, it's not permanent, but it stays. I'm gonna pull it real tight, and we'll hit it with the old. Boy, it's like, I think it's less than 20 degrees out here, and windy.
Pretty brisk.
It's definitely slowing progress, but we press on. What we're doing here is using regular decking screws to initially attach the ledger, and we found that works very well because if we use our big ledger screws, they tend to want to push the ledger around as they go into the wood because they're so fat. So we put these placeholders in, and then we'll go through and swap them out for the big ones after we have it all pinned straight where we want it. Higher. Good. Okay, we got our laser set back against the top of the ledger, which we have secured on with its final fasteners. And so now we're going to measure down and figure out where we have to cut our techno post. The techno post is going to sit underneath the beam on the outside, which sits underneath the ledger and the floor joist. 9.5 plus 11.5. 1 3/4 lower than this now. Even once we get the floor framing on here, we can still make that little adjustment if we find out that we're off by a little bit. So next we're going to make our beam up. Our beam for this project is going to be a quad 2x12, which means 4 2x12s attached together. Top one away from me. Good. All structural framing has to be nailed because screws will break under shear force, which means if you bend them back and forth a couple times, they'll snap. And nails don't. But nails don't suck 2 pieces of wood together. We like to get the holding power of some screws by running a couple rows of screws, and then we go and pop all of our nails in. Takes a little bit more time, but you get a better result in the end. You don't end up with beams or framing members that are going to go and separate over time. Towards me. Good. Okay, it's been so cold these past few days that our camera died yesterday while we were finishing up. So we've done a couple steps that you didn't get to see, but you didn't miss too much. So I'm going to show you what we did. We got this beam dropped into the brackets, and we found that because it's pressure treated lumber, which swells a little bit. It didn't quite fit in there, so we had to bevel the edge, kind of carve it away. We just used the Sawzall for that, and that allowed us to slip it in and pound it down into those brackets. Once it was in the brackets, we cut our first 2 floor joists for the outsides, as you can see. After we did that, we were able to use these brackets, which have a little fine-tuning adjustment, and get everything perfectly level. We stretched the string tight across, right across the ends of the 2 floor joists, because the edge of the house might not be straight, but if we cut our first 2 for the outsides, stretch a string, and then measure out to the string, then we know that every one of these is going to be cut so that the line is perfectly straight across here. We got all of these joists measured and marked on the ledger. So the plan for today is to get all those cut and mounted on there. We're going to mount a rim joist on the ends of all of them, and that'll conclude our floor framing. After that, we can start getting into sheathing. Now that I have the floor joists all pre-cut to length, I'm just going to go along, and at each point where we're going to have a joist coming into the ledger, I'm going to mark a square line down from the top. That way, when I go ahead and mount the joist to the ledger, I know what angle I have to put it at. I don't have to use like a level or anything at that point. This floor is going to use what's called 16 on center framing. 16 on center means that we start by hooking on the outside here. You want the center of your first joist in from the outside to be 16 inches. So we don't make our mark at 16. Take a look, we make our mark at 15 1/4 because the 2x4 lumber is 1.5 inches wide. So that means that the 16 inch is going to be right in the center of that joist when we mount it on the line. Why that detail matters is because when we put our plywood sheets on the top of this framing for the deck, those sheets are going to be 4 feet wide. 4 feet lands right on a 16 mark. So we want our joist to be in the center of that 16 mark to support the seam between the plywood. So this is our outside rim joist. It's the piece of wood that's going to go on the ends of these floor joists here. First step is going to be cut this to length. The ends of these boards from the mill are rarely square, so I always will clean the end, which means just cutting a little bit off the end, but marking my own square line. 15, 6. So we're going to mark this piece out 16 on center. Remember, that means that we mark it at 15 1/4, and we throw an X above the 16. Okay, so I went ahead and got all of the joists pinned onto the ledger, but what really holds those on permanently is this bracket here. This is called a joist hanger, and it's got all these nail holes in it, see? So some of the nails go into the side of the joist, and some of them go straight into the ledger. If my hand is the joist, this is going to hook underneath and hold it up. It's going to cradle it. Just like there were brackets at the house, there's also brackets to connect the joists down to the beam. Right here, it's called a hurricane tie. And this is going to sit right down here on the connection. You get 5 nails into the beam, and then 5 nails into the side of the joist. We have all of our brackets installed for the joists. Now we can finish the floor framing by cutting and starting to install our 3/4 inch subfloor. Okay, we're going to start by applying construction adhesive to the tops of the floor joists. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a squeaky floor. And then we're going to nail it down. I snapped a chalk line before I did this, right where the edge of the plywood's going to be, so that I know where to stop the foam. What I'm doing here is marking where I want each joist, where they should be, because every one of these is going to bow a little bit as it comes across, so I can bend them to the point where I need them to be. If I mark them, then I know they're all straight. So just go through, push it where it needs to be. This next piece is only 4 feet, and that's so that you can stagger the seams by half a sheet. If you line up all your seams, it's going to create a weak point for flexion. So you want those seams to be staggered. Okay, that wraps up our floor framing. We got a beautiful level, square, and tight floor. In the next episode, we're going to be framing our wall, so be sure to check that out.